All right, well, it's 1 o'clock Eastern time, so we'll get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar today about completing daily inspections on Ansul vehicle fire suppression systems. My name is Matt Burtney. I'm the content marketer for Levitt-Safety, and I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. Before I introduce our hosts, I'd like to remind everyone that this presentation is being recorded, so we'll be sending it to registrants via email in about the next 24 hours. There will also be a question and answer section in the webinar. So you can use the chat function in GoToWebinar to submit a question, and our host will address that towards the end of the presentation. Our team at Levitt-Safety is still working from home, so we thank you in advance for your patience in case there are any technical issues or if any of our home internet connections are acting up. We'll do our best to work through that situation. So without any further ado, joining me today is Derek McEwen. He is Levitt-Safety's Market Segment Manager for Fire Systems, and Dan Menard, who is Levitt-Safety's CPQ Specialist for VFSS Sales. So I will pass it over to you guys to enlighten everybody about VSS systems.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm Derek McEwen. I'm Market Segment Manager for Fire Systems and Mining Technology. I've been with Levitt for quite a few years now, about 10 years, and worked with the Ansul product pretty much since the beginning of my time here. So really excited to share some information with you today just on the daily inspections of your vehicle fire suppression systems, which is a really critical part of the protection of your mobile equipment. Levitt-Safety, of course, is been partnered with Ansul now for 60 years plus, I believe. We are one of Ansul's global leaders in sales and support of the product. So as a distribution partner to Ansul, we're very proud to, share the information on this specific line of vehicle fire suppression systems. We, of course, would like to make sure that you have the information to make sure that you're safe at work at all times. So that's the purpose of this webinar. Vehicle fire suppression systems, of course, are installed on equipment. Dan, if you don't mind flipping a slide there. For lots of purposes, but obviously equipment nowadays is running at higher temperatures with Tier 4 engines. Fuel loads are getting bigger and bigger as equipment gets bigger. So there's a real potential for fire to occur on these types of equipment. So therefore, vehicle fire suppression becomes a key component to helping to get operators off first and foremost. Secondarily, to protect the equipment or the asset. And third, to make sure that the infrastructure or the buildings that are surrounding this equipment, if it's in a maintenance sort of position, that those are protected as well by the same suppression system. At Levitt-Safety, we service a lot of different types of fire suppression systems, Ansul being one of the foremost. The different industries that we're involved in, of course, are mining, forestry, waste management, materials and container handling. Pretty much anywhere that you can find one of these types of equipment, we are able to go out and service them. It's one of the big one of the best parts of Levitt-Safety is that we're very mobile and can service across Canada in remote locations, both installation, service, maintenance, and to help support your inspection needs. So I'd like to turn this over to Dan Menard now, as he's going to go through the specifics of how to do a daily inspection of your vehicle fire suppression system.
Good day, everybody. My name is Dan Menard, and I'm the Eastern Canada CPQ for vehicle fire suppression systems, sales and service and support. As much as it is important to have a system on a machine, it's also very important to maintain and service the fire suppression on your equipment. We're going to go through a few slides indicating what needs to be done, what is required for maintenance. So inspections, we have daily, weekly, and monthly inspections. A daily inspection is a quick visual check that the fire suppression system will operate. Is it intended to give reasonable assurance that the system is fully charged and operable? It should be completed and documented daily, weekly, and monthly by the operator who has received manufacturer and user training. So any discrepancies that are noted should be brought up to, should be brought up to a Ansul distributor or the supervisor so that service can be done to the equipment. So on a 6 months inspection and 15-hour maintenance, basically is a thorough examination of the cyber suppression system intended to give maximum assurance that the system will operate effectively. Normally must be completed by an Ansul factory certified technician employed by an authorized distributor. Okay. The 6 months inspection may be scheduled sooner based on the hours the machine is operating and the environment. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 6 months. There's also a 12-year maintenance overview on the systems, basically throughout the system where the distribution might get replaced. The LVS tanks might be hydrostatically tested. A lot of times these machines are refurbished before that time date, so it may not be necessary, but machines that are over the 12-year maintenance will need that overview to be done. We also want to make sure that we have CHECKFIRE detection actuating systems will operate as intended alongside the distribution system of the system, and must be performed at specified intervals. So the detection system we have in place at this moment are the older models, SCN and MPN, and then the latest generation of the detection systems are the CHECKFIRE 110 system and the CHECKFIRE 210 system. So we'll give you an overview of each of the systems. So basically, on the CHECKFIRE 110 system, this is the layout. The 110 system is in conjunction with this distribution system, that it may be dry chemical or LVS system. Also, the 110 can only fire up to 2 tanks per system. So basically, the CHECKFIRE 110 is a lower end system that accommodate the smaller machines. In the sequence of operation for the CHECKFIRE 110, basically the system is powered through either the vehicle battery or it has an internal capacitor power storage for the system. Okay, so basically when a fire is detected, the input detection, either be linear detection wire or spot detection, will detect the fire. The system will go into alarm, letting know the operator is having an issue or having a fire on board. Eventually, the system will go into its cycles and eventually release the system so they can release either the dry chemical or LVS upon the fire. Okay, and hopefully the fire is put out. Okay.
Dan, does the system have to be actuated automatically or by the detection system?
No, if that option, like, you shouldn't have to wait for the detection to pick up the fire. Obviously, if the operator sees the fire, he's obviously has the chance of putting out the fire manually. We have manual actuators on the machine to be able to do this.
Thanks, Dan.
Going to the CHECKFIRE 210 detection system, the CHECKFIRE 210 is a more complex system. It can handle more than 2 tanks. it's has more options than the 110. So it's the, let's say, the higher end of the system. It has the capabilities of running a linear detection wire, spot detection, and also IR detection, which is infrared detection. It's a flame detector. Okay. It also has, the system is in combination with the rest of the distribution of dry chemical or LVS. They both work the same for 110 and 210. On the sequence operation, similar to the 110, but more options again. You would have 2 detection input on this particular unit. You can tie in a remote alarm or remote strobe on this, or you can separate your detection loops to protect separate parts of the machine. So again, the power is vehicle battery, or it has an internal 3.6 volt battery inside as a backup. So if your vehicle battery fails, then that internal battery will kick in so that you have 24-hour protection. Again, the input, the detection will pick up either the flame, fire, or situation, and then go into alarm once again, set off the strobes, alarms, and then eventually release the dry chemical or the LVS upon the fire.
And if you don't mind backing up a couple slides there, just to the one, I think it showed a picture of the actual distribution network. Yes. So are all systems laid out in the same manner, and what parameters do they have to meet when being installed?
The systems are pre-engineered. There'll be a variance between a dry chemical and LVS, obviously. The criteria of the distribution, the technicians are taught how to install the system. There has to be, we have to follow the criteria of the manual to make sure that the distribution is properly laid out. Otherwise, you can have issues with not having enough dry chemical to go to each nozzles. So there is a criteria that we have to follow through the manual.
Excellent. And as you mentioned, I think you said pretty much between all of the different systems, there might be slight variances, but the parameters are pretty much the same on the distribution network.
Yes. And then the actuation for either dry chemical or LVS are basically on the same part. They're charged with nitrogen that gives the pressure to the tanks to release the dry chemical or LVS liquid.
Great. That's an excellent addition there, just to mention that, you know, a lot of our systems are operated both pneumatically and electrically so that you have that backup in any condition. So thanks, Dan.
Exactly. So visual inspection on the panels, either it be SCN, MPN. SCN and MPN, MPN is mine permissible as a unit that's used in areas with coal mines or high methane gas mines, so it's mine permissibles. On the CHECKFIRE SCN, CHECKFIRE 110, CHECKFIRE 210, basically you want to be looking for a green LED, which is your power light, telling you that the control modules are in operation and that there is no other LED illuminating from the panels, telling you which you may have an issue with detection or with a release cable or anything, and must get service people to look at it if you see any of these yellow fault lights. The interface control module, basically you want to make sure that the unit is well secured. The cabling and wires are tight and not strained or damaged. And the orientation is correct, meaning that the cables are not pinched in an area where it could cause issues with the control module. Typically, our technicians look out for these issues to make sure that the installation is properly done. Okay. Visual inspection of the tanks. We want to make sure that the tanks and cartridges appear in correct areas and they're not damaged. No issues with the tanks or cartridges. They're well placed. The hoses are connected and making sure there's no issue with the hose distribution. We also look for tanks that are damaged. You may have issues with brackets, rings, tank rings that may break off due to vibration of the machine. A very big issue with fire suppression. A good example is a dozer where you get a lot of vibration, which may cause damage to the fire suppression tanks and brackets. Okay. Visual inspection.
Go
Sorry.
Go back one slide there, please.
Yes.
What other things would we be looking for on the tanks? Are we looking for the caps to be in place and solidly?
We're looking for damaged shell, corrosion, any broken brackets, even dents into tanks that may cause the system to fail. So these are all important parts to look for.
What if we have a label that's not legible or a hydrostatic test sticker that's partially in place?
Yeah, labels are part of the tanks where you have the instruction labels and also, like you mentioned, the hydrostatic testing of labels has to be visual so that we can identify when the testing intervals are due. Typically, when we don't see that, automatically those tanks will come out for service. We do not take chance on this being a life-saving device.
Makes sense.
So visual inspection of the wires. On the good side of the picture here, you can see a well laid out detection system, making sure that the hoses and the wires are braced properly. If you don't, then you're going to see, spliced or broken wires or strip wires, which may rub through and cause an accidental discharge. So it's important that these inspections are consistent and making sure that everything's all right. Fittings on systems, basically you want to make sure that all the fittings are tight, and there's as much as you can see when you're doing a visual inspection on a monthly or daily. Because sometimes a lot of these hoses and connections may not be available because of panels or the way it's installed. Ideally, on a perfect installation, the technician will make it easy for the next technician to do the inspection. Hoses, again, what we look for, is a good installed hose distribution to make sure that there's no rub throughs or broken hose or hoses that have been subject to heat, those kinds of things. We want to make sure that distribution is going to be able to deliver the chemical as intended. Again, discharge nozzles, we want to make sure that we inspect the nozzles that are in good condition, no physical damage, they're aimed correctly, and they're not blocked. All nozzles must have nozzle caps installed to prevent any debris from getting into the distribution network. Properly, hoses must be installed so that there's no rub through or any issues, any blockage in front of the nozzles. Inspection of the manual actuators, a very important part because should your system, your detection system fail on you, at least you have a backup to be able to set off the system manually. So you want to make sure that the manual actuators are in good condition, the pins are intact, the knobs are intact for activating it. the connections either be electric cable or pneumatic hose are in good condition and shouldn't have an issue, and making sure the safety seal is intact.
Do they normally have a operating label near them too, Dan?
Yes, as you see in the picture, you'll see there's an instruction label above the manual actuator where it tells you how to operate and that's important, that those should be in place to make sure that people understand how to use it.
I like the picture and how it portrays a very clean machine, because in most normal operating conditions, you don't see this sort of pristine condition. So I think it's just normal to expect that you might have to do a little bit of a wipe up around some of this stuff to make sure that it is free and clear of debris.
Yes, and it's very important for that, especially a good example is forestry equipment, where a lot of debris will go onto the machine, pine needles, you name it, and that alone is fuel in itself. So you want to make sure that your equipment is clean on a regular basis, even on a daily basis, especially forestry. Our technicians take the time to make sure that the installations are neatly installed to prevent issues with either maintenance or environmental debris impacting the system. So we're well trained in that area also. If any damages are found on the system, okay, you need to immediately contact the supervisor. Take steps to lock out the machine so the machine can't be used because the system is not in operation. You should not be using the equipment until it's repaired by a service distributor or an Ansul factory certified technician. Least but not last, anytime that we do inspections, even if it's the operator doing a visual inspection of his equipment before starting his shift, it should be recorded on his vehicle daily check or a monthly maintenance record, or again, a 6 months when our technicians will do a report on the work that has been done in the inspection. So very important to keep records in hand so that we can review if any issues arise from a failed system or a fire.
Dan, would you say there's a difference between a daily inspection that an operator would do as opposed to, say, a weekly or monthly that might, be seeing an actual mechanic or shop condition?
Yeah. So if I was an operator, I would want to make sure that my system that is on my machine is ready to go for me at the start of my shift and during my shift. So a daily inspection is just to make sure that, yeah, okay, I've got my cartridges are okay, nothing is wrong with the actuators. My control system is in place and powered up and no issues. So it only it's no different when the operator has to do the rest of his daily check on his brakes, fluids on the machine. It should be part of the daily check. And I believe it is. A lot of mines I've been into where that option is there for them to do before a shift. Very important.
You say much more visual, whereas if it's a monthly inspection, you may actually, grab a hold of a hose and give it a little shake, make sure everything's in place and intact, a little more thorough on a monthly sort of basis.
Exactly. The monthly may involve opening some panels to check inside, check some of the distribution, check out the nozzles, making sure nothing has come apart or a hose is broken, as much as they can see, obviously. Yes. So your daily is basically a routine daily check, which is still important enough, though.
Thanks, Dad.
All right. So at this point, hopefully the information we're able to give you, is there any questions for us to answer?
Yeah, we got a few already, and if anybody does have questions, feel free to submit those through the chat function, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So the first question we had submitted during the talk today is, what is the recommended practice for the location of an operator if he manually activates the system?
So ideally, on a system, you would normally have, at the very least, 2 manual actuators, and also the actuation on the CHECKFIRE. There's a way of activating the system on the control module, so it would give you 3 options. So typically you would have one in the cab and one outside of the machine at ground level, so you can reach it. And it could be on the opposite side of the machine. I've seen machines that have 4 manual actuators. It could be a preference from the mine site or the end user requesting more.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Dan, a little bit, is that we try to protect any points of egress for operators or mechanics. You might have divisions on bigger, larger equipment like shovels, where you'd want to put one outside of a door that's leading into the engine compartment, your ladders that are going down. So it really depends on the size of the equipment, but Dan was quite accurate in saying at minimum you'd have probably 2, one being in the cab and one at your point of egress or ground level.
Perfect, thanks guys. The next question we have here, I have noticed something wrong with this system during my inspection. Is it okay to run the equipment until it can be repaired?
I'll take that one, Dan, if you're okay. So I think the best practice, of course, is to ensure that you report that to the supervisor, your supervisor, immediate supervisors. They can make some of the decisions as far as the severity of what they see. And from there, I think it's always going to be very important to get your authorized Ansul distributor involved at some capacity there, maybe you're descriptive. And I think of right now during COVID times, especially where you may not have access to bringing people on site or getting them close to your equipment. We've been very creative in, having, a mechanic show us via their camera on their phone what they feel is not going right with the system, and we can do some diagnosis even remotely in that case. So I think it's important to note too that only an authorized distributor, like Dan had mentioned earlier, should be doing those repairs as well.
Great, thanks, Derek. The next question I'll give to you, Dan. Why is it a good idea to do a daily check on the fire suppression system?
Again, as I explained, from any time on a shift, these machines, it'd be in forestry or mining, the machines work 24/7, and you may have multiple operators operating these machines. So from one shift to another, you want to make sure that that system is going to be operational for you when you use it before your shift and during your shift. Very important that the operator checks the essentials, manual actuators and tanks and whatnot to make sure that they're operational.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. Another question just came in here. For the Ansul yearly inspection, does it require an Ansul representative, or can it be an Ansul certified worker? And can this be someone who has been trained and certified by Ansul?
Derek, did you want to grab this one, or?
I think if I'm hearing the question, I think we've addressed it a few times. An Ansul authorized distributor should be the one doing your yearly or 6-month interval inspections. And especially having Ansul certified training is critical. And most of the times within that as well, you look at, for example, within Levitt-Safety, we don't just put a technician through a quick Ansul 2-day course and then unleash him to be doing inspections. We do all of our own internal training as well on top of that to ensure that they're qualified in order to do that work. So I think if I'm correct, the answer would be yes, it should be done by an Ansul authorized distributor with Ansul training.
Awesome. And I have the next question is, I have a system that has a wet and dry chemical tank. Are these compatible?
Yes, so very much so. These are dual agent designs are out there, especially on larger pieces of equipment. The dry chemical offers a sort of total flood methodology to fire suppression. And then as we, like I mentioned very early in the webinar, when we get into the higher end tier 4 engines, we're running at very high temperatures. So the liquid agent, which was introduced about 10 years ago, has really become prevalent in making sure that we can cool things as well. So now you have a dual agent system can be very effective in not only knocking down an initial flare up, but also cooling an area which is attacking two parts of the fire tetrahedron, which is even better.
Awesome. And we have, attendees from across the country right now. So if they're interested in having a servicing call, where can we go anywhere in the world, in the country?
Yes, we're very capable of deploying technicians across all of Canada. We've done installations as remote as in the far north of Yukon, in diamond mines, in some of the gold mines up in Quebec. We're pretty much across the nation with certified technicians.
Perfect. All right. Well, that is the questions we have coming in so far. Any final thoughts from you guys before we say our goodbyes?
I would like to quickly, mention some of the team that helps put these things together. I mean, Andrew Patterson and the QA/QC team are always there trying to make sure that we're doing Levitt-Safety's work at its utmost in accordance with the manufacturer. And Andrew's involvement in putting together the slide deck was really great. Of course, to our technicians who are there to support all of our end users that have the vehicle fire suppression systems across the nation. They're often the unsung heroes. Dan, co-presenter, and then of course the marketing team, Matt, you yourself, Rami, and Anne, who help make us all look really great. So that's just my closing remarks.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys very much for taking the time to put this together and for presenting it to our group of people. Again, as a reminder for everyone who is on the call today, we will be sending out a recorded version of the webinar within the next 24 hours or so. So thank you guys very much and have a rest of a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.